Welcome back to the Marketing MadMen, Action 1063. We are live from Lima. We're sitting here on the cliffs of Miraflores. So quick breakdown. It's been an amazing trip. The city has pyramids in the middle of the street, just sitting there, just pyramids. So many empires, so many people have been here. Huge city, 10 million people. We've eaten well, we've drank well. We've seen a lot. We had a hotel in San Isidro. We've been down to Barranco. We've been everywhere you can possibly be in the 3 days that we were here. So we're going to give you a quick breakdown of everything, pictures, videos, everything we've had. But it's been an amazing trip. Shout out to Chef who gave some recommendations. And if you can get down here, get to Lima. It's an amazing place.
First, some history. Lima is a city of about 10 million people, which is a huge amount of people, very populated, made me feel a lot like where I was born in New York City. It is separated into zones, about 40 or so of these zones. Again, huge, sprawling mega city. We spent most of our time, probably like most tourists, in the old city, the cultural center, Miraflores, which is the neighborhood on the water, wealthy neighborhood, Barranco, which was kind of the bohemian hipster vibe area, and then San Isidro, which our hotel was at, and it's kind of the business district. The weather doesn't vary much. It's between 60 and 80 degrees of all times. It is on the southern hemisphere, so it's opposite seasons of ours. And they only get about 4 inches of rain a year. That being said, there is some interesting flora, trees, animals. Everything is a little odd. Even though it only rains 4 inches a year, the water puts this misty humidity off that allows all these crazy trees to grow. So, for example, it is a desert. It is arid, but there are also palm trees. So you have cacti and palm trees on top of each other, literally growing out of the same soil. It's insane. Again, that mist also made it kind of weird and dreary. And you know, in San Diego, they call it June gloom, but kind of gloomy. But eventually it would burn off and it would be as hot as can be because the sun is also so strong. So again, unique temperature. And that temperature is what sets up a lot of what makes this city so interesting. So tourist attractions, we did a lot of walking. Like most big cities, it's great. The best thing you can do is walk it. So we walked about 30 miles. The main tourist attractions that stood out were the main art museum, the Basilica of St. Francis, and the ruins of Puncana. The art museum told a great story of all the different parts of the history, from the native people to the Incas to the Spanish conquistadors, everything. You can see all these different areas of influence that come in. The Basilica, insane history and art, Baroque style, Nouveau style, and then there were gold everywhere. The coolest part, in addition to the stories that they told of the Franciscans and history, was definitely the catacombs below. So for those that don't know, catacombs are pretty much underground caves of bones and bodies and grave sites. So we got to see the largest catacombs outside of Rome, outside the Vatican, and it was crazy to see. They're just bones and skulls lying there. Babies, people just watching it. So I would think that was the most haunted place. That is until we got to the ruins. So the ruins at Puncana were literally in the dead middle of the city. We saw that 2,000 years of history following from the ancient civilizations to where they would bury people, to where they rose up to the top of the city, to where the Incas started burying people. Pretty much it was buried, and they just started excavating about 20 years ago. It'll take another 30 to 40 years for them to excavate this the full way. But again, the craziest part is that this is in the dead middle of the city. You walk up this hill, and all of a sudden you're surrounded on all sides by buildings. It was just wild. The last attraction had to be the water by itself. You walk, and it's about probably a 20-mile stretch of parks, museums. There was even a mall built into the cliffs. So you walk to the edge, and you're hanging off cliffs over the water. It was really, really cool. Once the sun did pop out, you were seeing people surfing and paragliding. I mean, the activity out there was insane, which, for what it's worth, made me kind of stop and think a second about how poorly set up we are in the U.S. for this. Everything requires a car. You don't see the families out there playing. You saw generations, grandparents, grandkids, parents, all out there together. Friends, everyone kind of just hanging out in these plazas. And it's a really incredible sight to see, and it's something you just don't unfortunately see here. The family unit is so separated, and we don't have parks in these gathering places. So, you know, it's upsetting to see, but that's what it is. That's why you go places like this and explore, and it was quite an experience to do so. All right, so now to the good stuff. So we took chef's advice on a lot of this, but I was most interested in the food. Lima is one of the top culinary destinations in the world. So I'm going to go into what we did, what we saw, where we ate, with a little context. First off, let's start kind of in a row just of what we did. So number one was called Kjolle. Kjolle is the number 28 restaurant in the world right now. Same people who started Central a couple of years ago. And their claim to fame is it is a culinary walk, if you will, through the different parts and geographies and topographies of Peru. So from the ocean to the desert to the mountains, for a country of 30 million people, there is a lot of different flora and fauna and topographies and geographies and weather patterns. So this is a pretty much one of those, what you can imagine, a huge 8-course tasting menu, really cool space. The standout items on our menu, which seems to be a seasonal one, were the scallops, the tubers, all 7 kinds of vegetables all put together on this plate, and then the lobster dish. It was an amazing experience. One you wouldn't do every year. It was quite expensive, but for what it's worth, it was one of those anniversary meals that makes it worth its while. Only point of frustration, it seems as if they do a good job of not letting anyone know how much the meal costs. I read from $150 to $200, and the menu doesn't say what it is. So when you get to the end, it's kind of a guessing game on a bill. I don't care who you are. Seeing a $600 bill makes the meal different. And it was the only point of frustration. It seems as since they've made the top 50 list, the price has steadily increased, and they've done a good job of suppressing that price. I don't know why they do it. I recommend against it. I was going to pay that amount anyway, and it kind of feels like a kick in the nuts to get a bill that high at the end. But that being said, it was quite an experience. I really dug Peruvian Chinatown. China is one of the first countries in the world to open their borders to Chinese immigrants. Peru was one of the first countries in the world to open its border to Chinese immigrants, and it's been a race since. So it's one of the largest Chinatowns in the world, and they have their own cuisine called Chifa, which is Peruvian Chinese hybrid. So traditional Chinese food. We wanted to keep actually traditional on purpose. Being a New Yorker, I love my Chinese food, so we stayed with pretty much fried rice, shumai, and wonton soup. So the food felt familiar and comfortable, but at the same time, there was more flavor, less salt. It tasted more like a mix of those things. And the coolest part by far, though, was that when you go to most Chinatowns, all the people there are Chinese. In New York, Philly, San Francisco, anywhere I've been, it's a huge Chinese population. For whatever reason, in Peru, it's all Peruvians that work here. So you really feel this mixture of cultures. And it was a cool thing. It's right by the old city. It was a great thing to experience. Next, also Materia. Materia was another top 50 restaurant in the world. Pretty much feel like a neighborhood bar. Like you're just sitting there at the restaurant. There's plants built into the building. You're halfway outside. We got blue crab, which was the crab legs kind of hanging out, and then the body of the crab all built into this dip almost, like you would do with mussels or like a barbecue shrimp dish, and you just scooped it all up. Insane. So good. And then we had the lomo saltado, which is a dish you have to try. Interesting. It was complex but simple, and they have French fries, soy sauce, and ají amarillo, which is their yellow chili sauce that we talked about with Chef, all coming together for this weird texture and diversity but it is unbelievable. It's something to check out. A lot of places do make it now, so check it out if you can. We also stopped at a place called Primos for pollo a la brasa, something you have to do. You have to try it out. Ají amarillo, they cook it the right way on a rotisserie. You can tell they've been making this dish for hundreds, if not 200s of years. It was unbelievable. And then lastly, we tried some Nikkei cuisine, which again, in addition to the Chinese influence, there's a huge Japanese influence. Nikkei cuisine is the one to look out for. Across the world, you will see this starting to spread. In fact, the restaurant we ate at, Osaka, is now in Dubai. It's made its way to the Middle East. It's in the U.S., so it's spreading all over the world. Quite good. I liked it. I'm not the biggest fan just because it is similar enough to Japanese cuisine that it's hard to change it, but you could definitely see those Peruvian influences and flavors, and it was quite a meal. Last, and I think the most fun I had, the most surprising thing was the cocktail culture here. The cocktails were so much love went into it, almost as much as a dish. There was one that took 10 minutes to make. And the way they froth the egg and they put the pico in, there's spices, and you could just tell they put love into it and they really embrace it. We went to a place called Carnival. Carnival is a top 50 bar in the world. It's a crazy setup, but you walk in and there's this menu that you open, and as you open the pages, it actually reads like a book, and it's showing you the history and how these Incan characters come in to make these drinks. So one of the drinks I had was actually looked like a flute, and you can actually play it like a flute, which would be gimmicky everywhere else, but here the vibe just worked. So it was an awesome place. Guys throwing fire around as they're making drinks everywhere. And then, of course, I'd be remiss to forget my best friend, DJ Momo, who had headphones on and talked to you while you drank and came in this huge, intricate thing with golden chocolate. Now, I had some of that, I had some of the glitter on my face, so it looked like I had gone to a strip club, but those are different in Peru, so we'll save that conversation for a different time. So all in all, it was an amazing trip. Thank you to Chef for letting me know the breakdown. I'm glad I got to bring it to you live from here in Peru, and you've been listening to the Marketing MadMen on Extra 106.3, and we will catch you